Hi there. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to ask you an important question. Are you wondering why your hard work isn't reflecting in your bank account? If so, I've got something that could change the game for you. With my Digital Product Accelerator one-on-one coaching program, I'm on a mission to help entrepreneurs like you bank consistent revenue without sacrificing your time or sanity. Imagine shifting from 90% client-facing work to enjoying consistent revenue from your digital products, all while reclaiming your time. You already know that you don't need another course, and a one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to cut it. What you need is a strategic, long-term plan tailored just for you. So if you're ready to build the profitable, freedom-giving business you've dreamed of, apply to work with me by going to destinycop.com/apply. I cannot wait to learn more about you and your business. Welcome to the Course Creators MBA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Destiny Kopp, and I help business owners increase the revenue with digital products and evergreen sales funnels. In this podcast, we go deep into product and marketing strategies for digital product creators. We cover everything from digital product creation, how to market and sell your digital products, and just as important, how to find your ideal customer. Let's jump right into our show. And my special guest today is Jocelyn Montemarano. Jocelyn is an award-winning content strategist and video podcast producer for visionary experts and thought leaders to support them with connecting transformative ideas and solutions with people who need them the most. She works with her clients to guide them to create and leverage a video podcast that resonates more deeply with their aligned customers and reaches more of the right people so that they can cultivate a community that converts and make a widespread impact thereafter. And Jocelyn, thank you so much for joining me. I am super excited to jump into this topic with you. And we're going to be talking about ways to make your video podcast stand out and cultivate a highly engaged community. And I am interested in this myself. I absolutely love podcasting, but I've never done a video podcast. So I'm interested in learning more about that. But before we begin in all the questions I have for you, can you tell the audience a little bit more about you and how you help people and really just how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Destiny, for that introduction and for having me here on the show. I, like you said, am a video podcast producer, and I have really evolved myself throughout my career to get to this point. I have a background in magazine journalism and digital innovation. That's actually what I studied in college. So early in my career, I was working for magazines like Shape Magazine, as well as some other smaller magazines in the health and wellness industry, because that's a huge passion of mine. But then I realized that I really loved being able to kind of support the people that I was interviewing for those magazine articles. I was like, oh, these people, they just have such incredible missions and businesses, and that the work they're doing is so needed in our world, but they don't necessarily have kind of everything on their side of things to share their message unless they're featured in, a magazine like we were featuring them in. So I transitioned into the content marketing side of things. And that transition period was back when businesses were just starting to use blogs for promoting their business and attracting their clients. So my career started with really that blog format and using a blog to attract that community of people to these different businesses, blogs. And I was working with small brands and startups and small businesses. And then, of course, the internet evolved. And even years ago, before TikTok and before, short form video and things like that, YouTube has been around for a long time. So, also doing a lot of video shoots in there as well. And then just as, the internet has evolved and my skill set has evolved, it's really led me to ask the question of like, okay, what makes most sense for these thought leaders and experts who are really scaling their business to create like a very scalable content marketing ecosystem for their brands? And it all pointed to the video podcast format because we can really tap into the SEO that is available on YouTube. We can also leverage social with that video by breaking it into short form social clips. And then, of course, when we start everything with video, we can repurpose into audio, we can repurpose into text. So it really gives that CEO or that expert of the business the most flexibility because they can show up, really focus on creating that hero piece of content, in this instance, the video podcast episode. And then from there, they don't need to be involved in every other piece of it. So it creates a really nice scalable content marketing system for them. So that's how I kind of came to my current business and offering.
And I like how you laid that out. So they create the video podcast, which you can put on YouTube, and they can take aspects of that and put it on social, and then they can repurpose it and put it on a platform like Apple Podcast or even text on their website like a blog. So it's really, I love how you kind of laid that out, and I can see why that would be the perfect content marketing kind of strategy, if you would, for people like that. So let's say that somebody is sold on this. They're like, Jocelyn, I definitely want to do this. I want to create a video podcast show. What would you say is one of the most overlooked elements that, say, somebody wants to get started, but what do they need to do as they're going down that path, if you would?
Yeah. So something I noticed with a lot of podcasts, whether it's an audio only podcast or a video podcast, is a lot of hosts, especially those who are more, business owners using a podcast or a video podcast in their business to support tangible business results. What they really overlook at the beginning when they're conceptualizing their show is the premise of their show. A podcast is different than just, the way we post on Instagram, or even how most YouTube channels are created or most blogs are created. A lot of those formats of content are really like, okay, let's create this piece of content that appeals, to the algorithm, whether that's SEO or, specific strategies for Instagram or whatever other social platform. And it's kind of this like one-off piece of content. But when we're looking at actually creating a show, you want to have a premise, just like all of your favorite TV shows have a premise, right? Like Game of Thrones had this premise of, the king died and who was the rightful heir to the throne. And it took us on a beautiful eight season journey, I think. Same thing with like Survivor. Another one of my favorite shows is, the whole premise of this show is that there are 20 or 30 people stranded on an island and they're competing and voting each other out. We want to have a premise for your show so that all of your content is really connected under this umbrella, and people come back week over week because of the premise of the show, not necessarily just because the algorithm is serving it up in their feed, but really because they're on this journey with you. They're part of this story that you are telling, and you're creating this very cohesive place for them to show up. And most podcasts, especially in the online business type of world, are missing that premise. And people are just saying like, oh, I do X, Y, and Z in my business, and the topic of my show is going to be X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to talk about these, 3 or 5 categories of that topic. and that's that. And that's kind of the end of their premise development, but there's so much more involved in that.
So I'd like to delve in this a little bit further, if you don't mind. Let's say that we have a health and wellness coach out there. Let's say that she, um, and you probably have a better example than I might, but let's just say, for sake of argument, she helps people who are, maybe in their 40s and 50s, or struggling to lose weight. They might even be getting close to menopause. How would you create a premise around something like that? I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah. So in order to create like a really effective premise, we're essentially asking the question like, okay, how is this show going to be different than all the other shows in my niche, right? So I guarantee there's already a show out there that supports women in their 40s and 50s who, are around menopause or approaching that and maybe struggling with their weight and maybe some of their other biometrics that are, important health markers for them, right? There's probably dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of shows like that. So when we're developing the premise, what I look at with my clients is 3 really distinct areas so that we can pull out the things that are really unique to that entrepreneur's unique approach, the values, the type of people that they want to attract, how they think about their topic, so that we can make it really relevant and really refreshing and adding something new to their space rather than just, publishing the same type of content that's already out there. We want to really think about like, what else can be added to this conversation and where can I bring my unique experience, my unique expertise and values and ideas to offer something new or offer something different than what's being shared already.
And I hear you, and I think somebody listening here today might say, I agree with you, Jocelyn, but I don't know how to do that. So what would you recommend to them that they need to kind of do to begin uncovering what that unique premise would be?
Yeah. So the very first thing that I really encourage my clients to think about is number one, like, what is your brand commitment? And this goes above just like what you do. For example, I have a video podcast agency where, I support people with creating and managing their video podcast, but that's not really my commitment. As I shared earlier in this episode, years ago, I was on just blogging and video wasn't even on my radar. And then I transitioned and added video into my scope of work. And then, it evolved into podcasts. But my North Star of what I do in my work has been the same throughout the past decade of my experience. So that's really that brand commitment. It is like, what are you actually committed to in your business? And what is that commitment that you're always going to be providing for your clients, no matter what your offer suite looks like? So for me, my heart is really in making sure that like these ideas of these experts and these thought leaders who have just such profound ideas and really transformative courses and programs are able to get them out into the world and make a much bigger impact. And for a lot of them, they struggle, on the marketing side. So for me, I can bring my strength of communication and messaging and SEO and things like that and be able to support those thought leaders. And so my commitment is really in helping thought leaders get their message out into the world to more of the people who need it most, which is quite different than just saying like video podcasting, right? Like there's a whole essence around it. So that's always the first question I ask people is like, really, what is your brand commitment? Because that's going to create a much different North Star and put your whole, quote unquote, cruise ship on a very different path than if you just focus on what you do.
I love that. And as you were kind of going through that, I was thinking about my own business. And, obviously it's changed over the years, but I think at the end of the day, my commitment is helping people grow their business.
Mhm.
We have the courses where they have, we teach them how to build their own course. We help them with the evergreen sales funnels. But at the end of the day, my brand commitment is I want them to help them grow their own business, and we grow faster together, which is another reason why we do the monthly summit. So I
Mhm.
love how you kind of laid that out there. Um, any last minute tips, Jocelyn, for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of designing something that's really unique to your audience and creating an experience that, they can only get from your show, which is ultimately what we want, because that means that you're putting your expertise and your experience front and center and offering something really unique, and also very deeply thinking about what your aligned community members need. You really just want to think about, like, how can I make this different? What can I add to what is already out there? And what would be like a refreshing or very different way of looking at this compared to how other people are doing that, whether it's, the big topic of your show or the smaller actual episodes that, make up your podcast, but really thinking about, okay, what is out there? What can I offer that my community would absolutely love that they can't get anywhere else? That's really at the heart of creating a standout show that people want to come back to again and again, week after week.
And I know that you can help them there if they're thinking to myself, oh, this sounds great, but I just don't know where to begin. So Jocelyn, can you tell people where they can find you? And I believe you have a free gift for them also.
Yeah, so I would love to have you sign up for the Community That Converts email series. I share stories and insights for how to resonate more deeply and reach more of the right people through a video podcast. And you'll also receive, when you join, the 3 different ways that you can create a standout video podcast. And we covered one of them on today's episode, but you'll receive those 2 additional ways in that email sequence as well. So if you are really had your interest piqued in today's episode, that's the perfect next step for you to dive a little bit deeper. And you'll also receive additional prompts that can really help you, in your journal or on your whiteboard, go deeper into this and really conceptualize this for yourself.
And we'll make sure that those links are in the show notes so people can just click on Jocelyn and connect with you. And thank you so much for joining us today and kind of walking us through video podcast, what we need to consider when we're first starting kind of creating and coming up with an idea, but also kind of laying out that strategy of how we can use it in all of those different ways in our business to give us that kind of that cohesive content marketing strategy.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Destiny.
Thanks for listening all the way to the end. If you found value in this episode, I'd love a quick review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. If you don't know what to say in the review, just say, Destiny, I loved your episode on whatever topic you're listening to. This will help us get our content out to more people just like you. Have a great rest of your day, and bye for now.